Signal. Good. I'd like to call, wow, they are on, aren't they? Regular meeting of the Ion City Council Tuesday, February 6, 2024 to order. Janice, roll call.
Councilmember Atlan.
Here.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Here.
Councilmember Rhodes.
Here.
Vice Mayor Ratten.
Here.
Mayor LaFave.
Here. Item B is closed session. I'd like to move it to the end unless anybody has any.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We'll move closed session to the end. Go on to Pledge of Allegiance. Could you join me for join us for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I get a motion for approval of the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? We have one presentation tonight, which is the introduction of Selena Mitchell as the Recreation Coordinator.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I just wanted to point out Selena Mitchell. She is our new rec coordinator who started at the first of the year, and she has already hit the ground running. She's been introduced to the Parks and Rec Commission, and we have an item tonight. If you have any questions, she'll be here to answer those. But she has begun kicking off our rec program. She's begun administering our Explore Ione social media, and we're very happy to have her on board. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
And to open up for public comment for any item that is not on the agenda. No public comment. So closing public comment, we'll go on to information items F. Do we want to discuss those or that we just move on from that?
If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Council have any questions on item F?
No. Oh, thank you for doing that.
Okay. Moving on to the consent calendar.
I have two items I'd like to pull from the consent calendar, items 4 and 5. The lease for Howard Park Barn and the recreation program budget.
I'd like to pull 2 and 3. For some questions.
Are the questions on 2 and 3 stuff that would just be kind of clarifying?
Really easy.
questions?
Yeah, really.
Yeah, so if they're just clarifying questions, you don't have to necessarily pull them unless there's going to be discussion that would go along with it.
Okay, so we
Just
address the
ask that
clarification
Okay. So I want to pull 2 and 3 then.
and 4 and 5 is a discussion.
Yes.
correct? Okay. So do we move to just handle the discussion right now, or do we move that to the regular agenda?
So remember, Atlan, if you want to ask your questions as staff, we could see if they could be answered just by a quick answer. Otherwise, we pull them and answer them.
Okay. Real quick, I just wanted to know what the lift station $11,000 expense was for. What happened to the lift station in the warrants? That was on 2. And on the police military did a policy. There's things in there that we don't have. Are they just placeholders that will come up at the budget when, some of the items that they're on the list? It says to be determined at what point does that come back? You know, when you want to buy a command vehicle or some of the other equipment.
So I can go first if you want. So everything on that list is stuff we actually have.
Oh,
Yeah, everything's, in fact, we have to bring this to you every year. So this is actually the same exact one from last year. Nothing has changed on our military use policy. But this is something by law that we have to bring to council annually. And so everything in there is stuff we have. For instance, there's the 40 millimeter device that has been in the department inventory. We have no ammo for it. You'll notice that on the list there. But by law, I have to list that as stuff we have.
all right. The reason I asked is because there was a bunch of unknowns. When was it bought? Unknown. How was it purchased? Unknown. And so I figured that was a future purchase. So, but
Yeah.
it's just because someone bought it before you and we're not
Correct.
exactly sure when.
Yeah, and I was unable to
Okay.
track back and I know what you're talking about. I wasn't able to track back when they purchased some of the items. So-
Okay, thank you, chief.
Thank you, Chief.
If I might, Madam Mayor, regarding the lift station, I don't know the answer right offhand. I that I've discussed it, but I don't recall it just at this moment. So let me research that and I'll send you an email after.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I,
With that, I'll make a motion to adopt the consent calendars 1, 2, and 3.
Second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So I'll put those items 4 and 5 after the 2 existing items on the regular agenda.
Yeah, or you can just address them now and then move into the regular agenda. It's up to you.
I'll put them at the end. Well, actually, no, I'm going to put them, no, because we have people here and then we have a longer presentation on 1 and 2. So Dominic or Diane, item 4.
Item 4, yes, this is, first of all, this is the first I've seen this or heard of it, that we were even considering leasing the barn. I have some questions as to how that's going to affect our ability to rent the arena, what the financial impact of that will be. The contract itself has several errors in it. Most significant one is that the 4-H has indicated that they could only do this, rent this through June 30 of this year. But the contract itself says it's for 1 year from the date of signature. And that would put them in a bad position if that's actually continues. It references Exhibit A and it's actually listed as Exhibit B. I believe it lists you, Amy, as the city administrator, not the city manager. So I have some significant problems with the contract itself. And I would like to know what the impact of this rental of this facility will do to the arena itself and our ability to utilize the arena for revenue.
Okay, I can answer a couple of those, I think. So first, regarding the contract format, we just took the format that we had used with the other stakeholders, soccer, baseball, disc golf. And so I'm sorry about those errors. This was taken but the contract was taken to the Parks and Rec Commission and they had some questions. And I understand that had been brought up by Mayor LaFane also. So we haven't had really any rentals, a lot of rentals at the barn in this past year, but the contract does allow for barn rentals in addition to use at the with 4-H. What our observation was as staff is that this barn and this area would get more use with the 4-H group than with the arena because we haven't had any consistency at the arena. What we also were looking at is trying to ensure that with the Ione 4-H group is just having the ability for kids to be able to have their show animals at the barn. And then the 4-H group would be maintaining that whole area. Right now, it's kind of a mangy mess And we want to have the 4-H group use that area for a number of uses, including their animals. They've talked about a community garden, having their meetings there, et cetera. So, what we saw from looking at it, we didn't see a big financial impact with the barn. We did already have a, request to use the barn in, I think it's April. And so that would be the first kind of overlap. And so we would go through that. So the 4-H group has the ability where they can move their animals and keep open 4 stalls or whatever. So we would coordinate with them to be able to accommodate someone who might want to rent the barn for that weekend. But overall, we thought the greater good was with the 4-H than kind of like a weekend, semi-week, sometimes on the weekend here and there haphazardly using the barn as a rental, as opposed to the greater good for 4-H renting it for a whole season or a whole year to have their meetings there, have their show animals there, et cetera.
Which is great. But as far as renting the arena rental is not impacted by use of that barn. They do, when they rent the arena, they are not utilizing.
Not consistent.
the
It
barn.
hasn't been consistent. Clearly Allison can speak to that, but we haven't had really a lot of rental requests for the barn, even though we've had rental use. So they're mutually exclusive. So that's why we thought that the agreement with 4-H would be a good thing going forward.
Okay.
And
I,
there are members of the 4-H club here.
yeah, I saw that. I see Cody's here. I also have a question as to who is actually leasing it, the contract and the resolution. I mean, they're naming, I own Community 4-H, and then there's mention of the Sierra extension from UC Davis, and it's not consistent throughout who the actual leaseor is.
It's the UC
Lisi.
Davis. It's the Central Sierra, the UCCE co-op, I guess is, yeah. So I can correct that.
So what I'd like to see is this contract cleaned up. I would hate to see 4-H sign this when they are prohibited from doing anything over past June 30. And this contract currently clearly says that they are going to rent it for a year from date of signature. So if we can get that cleaned up and brought back to us, that would be my recommendation.
I got a couple of comments too, along the same lines. The contract isn't consistent with what 4-H wants it for. This one, I'm concerned that, it can go for 7 years. The 1 plus the 3 plus the 3. How does not having this affect our ability to retain a new arena manager, which I hope that we get? And I'd like to know, what the revenue loss could be on this. You're saying it isn't very much, but I'd just like to have a number. When things were running good at the arena, what was the barn bringing in? But again, I like to see just this tabled for a couple of weeks and brought back. You're missing Exhibit A. It's not even in this contract. It's actually.
I think it's actually B.
It's actually B,
it's
yeah.
misnamed.
I
in
just
the
think it
contract.
just needs a little bit more work. And what's going to happen after June 30th? If this contract said it's until June 30th, it would be different, but it says it's for 1 plus 3 plus 3. So as it stands, I'd like to just see this brought back.
I feel like I need to address some of the comments. You cannot judge that arena this year. That arena has had no marketing. The city's Facebook page hasn't had a post on it since May of 2023. There's no calendar. There's no contact information. The number of people that have reached out to the city and then had to contact me because they're not getting a response from the city. I at one point gave a list to staff. Nobody got a call back. The tractor has been missing, damaged, toast since August. The ground has not been worked since August. We finally got a volunteer in there at the end of this month. So you can't judge anything on this year's income with the arena. It has just been ignored. The arena manure compost bin is missing. It's now been removed. So that's another issue. I'm not against 4-H. I'm just what's happening here. There's an environmental impact. There was a reason we had the manure dumpster out there. It was pest control. It was back by the barn. You sort of isolated all the flies. The birds would go in and kill them, the dragonflies, and nature sort of took care of it for us. But to remove the dumpster that was free, I believe, from ACES didn't make any sense. So, you know, to be fair, you can't judge this year's income at all because there hasn't been any. It's been sitting vacant and the horse community is extremely frustrated. Last year, Parks and Rec asked for a committee, an appointment of an ad hoc committee for the arena. They never got it. You know, I sit on the Parks and Rec and I see you guys kind of struggling with these decisions. And you're not given the foundation of your roles as park commissioners. You guys don't have a budget. You don't have a copy of all the contracts that are in the park. You don't have, these things aren't given to you for you guys to really do the due diligence when these things come before you. You don't have the Muni codes. You don't have the park regulations for a regional park. You have nothing to sit down and look at these things and make a decision that's beneficial to the city and to the parks. I would ask that there be some way to do both. There's plenty of room back there. There really is. And you get a committee on Parks and Rec, an experience committee, not just every person who owns a horse, because they're in Disneyland. Owning horses is not Disneyland. Get people with experience in the horse business because they have a network. Like Debbie McGregor across the street. She's involved in everything. Get a committee to bring that arena back. Income producing, put 4-H back there and allow the horses to use the barn. It's a win-win. Because then you have the kids also at the arena versus it all goes together. It just needs to include both. Because there are a lot of kids that use that arena and the barn when it's marketed. So yes, I'd like to see it come back and I'd like to see, I don't know if I can do that now, have it put, maybe I can do it at the end on Parks and Rec, that they get an arena commissioned committee, ad hoc committee.
That's for the Parks and Rec to do.
So
Well, they've asked for it before and they weren't, it didn't happen.
So I guess you give direction to staff to report that to the Parks and Rec Commission.
Yeah, because they did ask for it. I want to say it was in May. Because they were frustrated. They didn't know what to do.
So I have a question for, I assume Cody, that's why you're here, is for the 4-H. If we are able to get this to you through June, is that usable? I mean, is that something that would be helpful to you at this point? Or is this something we should look at for June going forward as something that would be more beneficial for you? Because fair is.
So, yeah, to answer the timelines, the majority use that I see 4-H utilizing is during project animal season. So a lot of these are market animals that are sold at the fair in July. Okay, so everybody's going to be getting their lambs, hogs, goats around April. And then in July, they'll be sold at fair. So I know that the June date is concerning, but that's 4-H rules. So I also want to preface this with, I'm a volunteer. I'm the community club leader. And as such, I have no to negotiate, right? Or sign contracts. That's why you see Jolynn Miller's name on there. She's the region employee of UC Davis and oversees 4-H. Just from our take, what I can weigh in on though, is that I know that there's a lot of concern about the space and being able to rent it out for horse events. in reality, right now, I've kind of polled our club. We're the largest group in the county. We have like roughly 80 members right now. And but of them, most of them have facilities and have their own things. However, speaking from experience, I've lived inside the city limits my whole life. And I grew up, was a lifetime member, raised hogs, and most of my time was spent driving to Carbondale for the first few years because I kept my pigs out there. Then I was driving up Plymouth Highway outside of town to another person's house. Then finally I got a place in town that was grandfathered in before the zoning codes where I was able to keep pigs. But I guess by doing this, we find it a huge benefit to the kids who do live in town as a way to get involved. 4-H is huge. There's other things that aren't market animals. However, I think that brings another aspect of responsibility, community involvement, community service. And what we're willing to offer is a little bit of sweat equity and maintaining the area, putting some service back into the barn that's currently been sitting vacant. And then where I was going with it, I polled some of our members. I foresee us at capacity, like when everybody's in full swing, of using the 1/2 at the most. And that's within those months of March to July. So I would say 75% of the barn is going to be open for the year round. And I would say that half of the barn would be open 100% of the time. So I think we would focus our efforts on as you're looking at it, the left side of the barn where the indoor outdoor section is, thanks to efforts of our mayor. And then the outside half, which is the right side, I can see that being open year round for if somebody was coming in for an overnight event, wanted to rent it. I know the contract says we have first right of refusal, but I'm making that assumption now, but we don't have a problem with it, as well as the area around. Most people who haul into events have their own temporary panels, ways to secure their horse to the trailer overnight, whatever that may be. I don't see why we'd have any issue with that as well. So if there's any other questions for me, that's kind
Yeah,
of all I have.
I mean,
So it would be beneficial for you at this point to go ahead and move forward. with
Yes,
this for
and
now.
again, I know that the June thing is I don't know, we couldn't get around it just because that's how 4-H does their project years is July, like a
Yeah, they run on a fiscal
year.
year, which is, that's
yeah.
understandable.
But yeah, our intent is to keep going with that, and the way that our fair season aligns, it's a necessity that we keep going with it because fair isn't until July. So
Do you know if they would be able to sign a contract that had a 3-year period of 3 fiscal years, or do they only run 1 year
my
at a time?
understanding is they only do 1 year at a time.
1 year at a time.
Mhm.
Okay, so then the contract should probably reflect that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, I think the intent is to keep going with it. But that would be a question for Joe Lynn specifically.
Okay.
and
Thank
I'm sorry, go ahead. You clearly need a compost bin.
Yes.
It's livestock.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if ACES takes that kind of compost.
That I don't know either,
don't either.
to be honest, but, yeah, I think overall benefit to the children of the community having a place. And that way we also avoid conflict of people trying to put pigs in their backyard and on West Marlette or something like that, zoning issues. I think this is, yeah, I think this is
Story.
a good way
Somebody
to
did that.
around that. As well as it's very close proximity to Wildflower. We got a lot of kids out Wildflower.
Oh, they'll
It
be
would be
there.
right there. They could
They're
ride the bike
already-
over, take
they're
care of their
already excited.
lambs. Yeah.
They're already excited.
Okay, thanks, Cody.
Yep. Thank you.
So,
I think we got time.
all right, yeah, it
My-
needs to come back.
I think we have time to revise this and still hit the March, we can have it at the next meeting with the contract cleaned up and he's not preparing to go in there till next month. So I think we can do that. So,
Well, I think we have to. I
Yeah.
mean, with this, the way it's written now, we can't, I mean, even 4-H can't sign it. So we go, I'll make a motion that we table agenda item G4, contract with 4H until the next meeting.
Just staff know what.
We have to take public comment, sorry.
She knew that.
Hi, Renee Hansen. I own Parks and Recreation Commissioner, along with Demi Wright. Hi. Just a couple of things, at our meeting where Mr. Gold et al. Came and presented this issue. We had some of the same questions about use of the arena and how that would interfere with the barn. And we saw it as kind of a good thing that they had to go year to year, fiscal year to fiscal year, so that after the first fiscal year, we could see how things went together. We did note that there were issues with the wording in the contract with that in mind. But we did unanimously approve it. We thought it was a great effort, everything that he presented to you and everything that is not going on in the barn area. And to Allison's point about an ad hoc committee, we did discuss that mid-year last year. So something moving on the arena side would be fantastic. But you know, we gave it a lot of thought. We looked at the contract very closely and we unanimously approved it. So we just wanted the committee to know that. You got anything?
Thanks.
Oh, I'm just here to support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we have a motion or did it?
Well,
die?
I didn't make it.
Is there any
because
more
was
public comment on? Can't see it.
G4.
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 Did you want to make the motion?
I will as soon as we close public comment.
Okay.
Okay, closing public comment.
I'll make a motion to table this item G4 for a revised and cleaned up contract and then bring it back to the council at the next council meeting.
I get a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Moving on to item 5,
We have, yeah.
the 2024 Recreation Program Plan and Budget.
Well, I had hoped that we're going to have had a finance committee meeting before this came to us. Unfortunately, that has not happened. And I don't know where the parks budget is, how much they have, what they have, where they're going. I don't know what the current status of the ACRA situation is either. So again, I'm going to, I would love to approve this because this is everything that I was looking for. But at this point, I need a better understanding of where we are from a financial standpoint. And how this budget and what we have to pay to ACRA, how they're going to be coinciding with and the hiring of the new position. So again, I'm going to ask that this be tabled until the next meeting so that we can have a finance meeting prior, get a clear understanding of where we're at with finances as well as where we are at with the ACRA situation.
I just got a comment on, so the staff report here, so the whole position was funded by the money that we were saving by not joining ACRA. And it turns out that we have to pay ACRA, and I'm not exactly sure where we're at with that. But I do support the all of these programs. I don't think that the budget hit is that great, on 1, 2, and 3. However, if things don't pan out as the budget predicts, then we're going to be 45,000 plus the 34,000 in the hole. So I agree. I'd like just a little bit more information, come back, do this in a couple of weeks, but I would like to make it clear that, for sure the pool is, in my view, we're going to do that because we did that anyway. So I don't really care if we stretch the budget a little bit on the pool because we were going to always pay for the pool. So, yeah, I'd just like to know where we're at with our parks funding. And I thought that this, was a really good program and well done and, well put together. So.
So
thank you-
I do
Thank you
have-
for that.
I do have one question for the Parks and Recs and our new coordinator. Is this approval of this budget going to today inhibit your ability to get the pool running by June 1?
I think we,
Yes.
yes, yeah.
So
That's-
I'll answer that.
Mhm.
So yes, we do want authorization. We can bring this to the finance committee. As you can see, the dollar amounts aren't high based on the anticipated revenue, but we do need to get lifeguards trained and move that forward ASAP.
Okay. I was afraid of that.
But we can bring it back in 2 weeks. The issue is scheduling a finance committee in that time is what. So-
I thought I got an email on a finance committee. Didn't we get one?
No, that's a wastewater.
No, we got one and I remember I said, we're not on.
We were,
schedule it that day. It just didn't work
Okay.
out. for them.
Yeah.
well, we could have a finance committee meeting within the next 2 weeks to bring this back, but if this has, for the pool to go forward, it has to be approved today. Is that what I'm hearing?
Makes it easier.
Let me just, if you want to give staff direction to still move forward with the pool, I think we can accommodate that.
Yeah.
We'll get the finance meeting scheduled. I've assured Selena, we are moving forward with the pool
Yeah.
and to keep
Right,
charging
yeah, no,
forward.
we definitely would need to do that.
Yes.
I completely agree with that.
So we don't have to have approval. We'll bring it back at a finance committee, but know that we're moving forward with the pool though.
Yeah, I think we could take a consensus on that. I mean, that's the thing that hits the timeline right away. I mean, February 7th to March 7th is when they want to start hiring and recruiting. So they need to start doing that right now. So I think we could take a consensus that, we're definitely going to support, number one, the pool, and you can go ahead and do whatever you need to do on that. And then the others are a little bit further out that we could have that fixed by the next meeting. So, I mean, for sure, go ahead with a pool. Do what you
We're
need to
gonna-
do. But I think we need to agree on that so who agrees to move forward with the pool no matter what?
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the item number 1 on the budget item, which is the pool operating costs. And bring back the 2 and 3.
Yes.
But we have to have public comment
Well,
once we finish.
Councilman Mitchell Rhodes. Do you have a comment here on this before
I
we
just-
open it up?
I would just put through it as is. But well, I think I can understand why I want to review things. My thing would be, as I stated last year with the pool, and we didn't get what we wanted from ACRA with the pool. They need to move forward. So I'd say we need to pass the pool piece immediately. And then you guys on finance committee can look through and come back for the other items, but they certainly need to be given the green light to do the pool today.
I'm going to open it up to public comment.
Hi, I'm Demi Wright. I'm on the Parks and Rec Commission. And we unanimously approved Selena's presentation and plan for the pool, the summer youth program, and the all the wonderful benefits coming for seniors, adults, families to Ione. As you know, with our travels from Accra and like bringing this forth to you, we're just so impressed with what we have available today. Thank you for noticing and moving forward with the pool plan. I just wanted to highlight too, that a lot of these costs that you see here are one-time charges to get things up and running. These aren't going to be reoccurring expenses every year. And so that's just one thing to know. Also, like the meals and snacks, or the breakfast and lunch, I should say, not the snack, are free. They're already provided. So it's just a wonderful benefit coming to Ione. It's a really low number for the overall budget that you guys deal with. And it's quite the benefit. So we're here to answer any other questions you might have.
Just to piggyback on that, everything that she said, we also let her know that you would probably have additional questions on the budget. When it does go to finance committee, I'll be glad to come and be a member of the public and answer any questions that you guys have at that point too. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any more public comment? Okay, we'll close public comment.
And I will make a motion that we approve the 2024 recreation program plan and budget item number 1 and bring back items number 2 and 3 to the next council meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 No.
Okay, moving on to regular agenda. Item number 1, update regarding Amador Water Agency's water treatment emergency for the Ione Water Treatment Facility.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. My name is Larry McKinney. I'm the General Manager at the Amador Water Agency. It's a pleasure to be back here again. I wish I was talking about something more pleasant, but I do like to be able to come and speak to you periodically. And I've spoken on the issue of the limited capacity of the Ione treatment plant several times here before over the last couple of years. The issue has come to a head at this point. My board on the 12th of January adopted a resolution that declares a water shortage emergency in the Ione treatment plant service area based on the lack of additional capacity in the plant for further connections. The reason that the agency takes the action in this way is because we don't really have the authority to impose extraordinary measures, either limiting connections or imposing extraordinary conservation measures or anything like that without some other sort of state declaration of emergency, like in a drought, unless we declare an emergency pursuant to Section 350 of the California Water Code. So that's the procedure we're using. And my board did declare that emergency, and I'll talk about some of what the declaration has in it. But I wanted to give a little bit of context first. I know that not everybody has been following this for a long time, and the problem actually has existed for longer than the 3.5 years that I've been here. So first thing to note is that the problem that we have is a treatment plant capacity problem. It's not a shortage of the source water. We have adequate supply and rights to supply from the McCallum River. This is not a drinking water quality issue, and it's not related at all to the groundwater quality issues that are of interest to the people in Ione. I've heard a lot about that over the last few years. But our source of water for all the service that we provide to the city here is the McCallum River, not groundwater. And it's not affected by any of the local impacts on water quality that way. When we look at the capacity of our treatment plant, we look at it in two ways. We look at it in terms of average use over a year, which we measure in terms of equivalent dwelling units. And we look at peak usage, which is based maximum day demand, which is an actual peak day use within the last 10 years. We try to operate our treatment plants within what's called reliable capacity, which is the capacity that a plant can produce with an outage of some major component. That gives us some assurance of reliability. In this service area right now, the existing customers who are connected and have active accounts, when we look at what their either equivalent dwelling units are or the maximum day demand we would accept from them, those numbers exceed the total plant capacity of the Ione plant in both average and peak usage. Not reliable capacity, but total capacity. We've been able to get by for several reasons over the last few years. One is that these metrics that we use are statistical analyses and they're not exact. You don't hit a peak decade use every year, and averages mean that there are ups and downs. And we've been lucky. We've been fairly conservative in our water use. We probably were helped by the recent drought when we asked people to reduce water use, but our use is coming back up now. And also we've been lucky because we've had no outages of major plant components during periods of high use over the last 10 years. So we've never had to address that sort of immediate emergency. I want to give a little bit of a chronological context of how we got here, because I don't want people to think that this is something that just arose suddenly or that has been, people haven't been aware of it. the problem has been around for a long time, and we've actually tried to address it in a number of ways that haven't really succeeded. So the first thing is that the treatment plant that serves Ione, like the treatment plant at our headquarters, the Tanner treatment plant, both of those treatment plants were originally PG&E facilities, which we, the agency, acquired in 1985 when we acquired the Amador Water System from PG&E. At that time, the Ione Water Treatment Plant had a capacity of 650,000 gallons a day. In the late 1980s, the plant was expanded to 2.5 million gallons a day with significant support from the state because of the construction of the Mule Creek State Prison. Later, additional improvements to the plant took it to the point where its current tested capacity, this is not what it's designed for or what it's rated at, but what we've actually been able to run the plant at. Physical maximum capacity is 2.8 million gallons per day. In 2007, the agency staff reported to the board at that time that we were nearing plant capacity and that we could expect to have problems if we didn't make improvements. And in response to that, the agency engaged Stantec Consulting to begin design of a replacement plant to replace both the Tanner and Ione plants. However, the 2008 to 2010 economic downturn had a dramatic effect both on the agency's finances and on the demand projections because the housing market cratered and growth stopped. So there was not as much impetus to move forward with it. And eventually the design work on the plant replacement project was shelved. The project was deemed to be too expensive. And then we said we would try to find other solutions. We have made other improvements to the Ione plant in the meantime now. In 2016, we improved the backwash recycling capacity of the plant, which is one of the limiting factors on its ability to produce treated water. In 2018, we replaced the filter media and improved the piping and valves in the plant. And in 2019 and 2020, we made significant improvements to the process controls. We basically made things electronic so that with the one operator that's there, they could run the plant a lot more efficiently. Those improvements that I've just named totaled a little over $3.33 million over a period of 4 years. And they did improve the capacity of the plant somewhat. Also at that time, as I noted, we had the 2013 to 2017 drought, and that took some of the pressure off the plant. It also had a significant impact on the agency's revenues. So that was something we were grappling with at the same time. Just before I got here, the agency initiated a water master plan study, which was completed in January of 2021. This was the agency's first comprehensive look at all of its water systems with a condition assessment of all the above ground infrastructure done by an expert consulting engineer. The study identified many deficiencies in all of our water systems around the county with regard to current the ability to provide reliable service to existing customers currently. They also identified things that could be needed for growth in the future. And those are way at the end of our what we developed, a 20-year capital improvements plan to try to address existing needs, and growth impacts are beyond that. The most urgent of those projects were grouped into a 5-year piece of our 20-year CIP, and that 5-year list of projects was the main driver behind the significant rate increases that we started implementing in 2021 to finance those projects. Listed in those most urgent projects were several projects related to the Ione treatment plant. In 2022, we completed a follow-on technical study of the Tanner and Ione plants to look at in a very much more thorough way at those specific plants and to see what the bottlenecks in the treatment plant process were, whether those could be removed, whether the plants could be expanded, what we could do on the sites that we have, or whether we needed to consider other alternatives. That study was completed in the spring of 2022, and I'll talk in a moment about the alternatives that I identified. Meanwhile, last year in 2023, we spent about $800,000 to replace the cover on the clear well of the existing plant because it was a safety and water quality problem. But that's just an indication of how expensive these things get. So we have been investing in the plant. In addition, in 2023, we completed a geotechnical evaluation of the existing site because we weren't sure what the, how to evaluate the alternatives of making improvements to that site, whether that was even feasible because of the site itself being less than stable. So what we got out of that was that we could make improvements on the existing site, but the options that we had for doing that were increased by a couple of $1 million. So the conclusion that we reached after doing all these evaluations was that for the Ione plant, unlike the Tanner plant where we took several actions last year and we bought a little breathing room, for the Ione plant, there really are no alternatives for easy, simple expansions to buy time. The treatment plant capacity study that was done in 2022 identified several alternatives for trying to address the problem with the Ione plant. One alternative was to just replace the plant immediately. And one alternative was to take interim steps to try to improve the plant, to try to stretch the capacity, and eventually raise enough money to replace the plant. The replace the plant immediately alternative was in 2022 $109 million. And the longer term step-by-step approach ultimately was $120 million. And we were still evaluating that. My board hasn't made a decision about the final ultimate solution we were going to make. But the situation that we've arrived at now with having no capacity left in the plant has really forced us to make the decision to make interim improvements now, even though some of those investments may be lost over time if we ultimately replace the plant at a new site. But we don't really have a choice. So we have moved forward with the accelerated alternative, which is I don't even remember which one was called the accelerated alternative, but the step-by-step approach now. Meanwhile, the capital costs, which were estimated in 2022, have continued to inflate, and we've seen significant increases in costs. So the costs are very daunting for these treatment plant solutions. I want to talk for a moment about how the agency pays for capital projects. Unlike the school district, we don't have to go to the public for a vote on bond measures. We have the ability to issue revenue bonds. So that's one tool that we have. First and foremost, we try to look for grants wherever we can. And I think that it would, one of the things that I'm going to note at the end is that hopefully we can all work together on looking for grant opportunities to address this issue because it affects all of us. But we're not likely to get grants to cover all of this cost. And even the matches for grants of this size are challenging for the kind of rate base that we have, the size of a rate base. So we look for grants, and beyond that, our options are to pay as you go on capital projects or to borrow money to issue debt. And we're evaluating and actually using all of those approaches right now. My board has approved a financing strategy for the next several years to try to address our overall capital improvements program and also the urgent need that we have to make improvements in the Ione treatment plant and also the Tanner plant. In addition to those sources of revenue, I guess the obvious source of revenue for us is our rates. And we set our rates according to the legal requirements that we have. We're required to set rates that cover our operating costs and that cover any capital pay-as-you-go projects that we're going to build and that cover our debt service on borrowing. In addition to that, when people come in new and ask for service, we assess them capacity fees. The capacity fees are calculated being partially a buy-in and partially for capital improvements going forward. So the buy-in part of the capacity fee is calculated to put new customers in a fair position compared to other customers who are already paying for a system through their rates. And then the other part of the fee is for capital improvements that are seen in the near term that will make incremental improvements in capacity to allow growth. In 2016, the agency consolidated its finances and its rates and its fees for the entire agency, even though we have basically 5 different water systems that we serve. So this spans everywhere from Lake Comanche Villages to Pioneer and Eagles Nest to Plymouth. Part of that was to reevaluate capacity fees, and we'd made a significant adjustment to capacity fees in 2021 at the same time that we did the rate adjustments. And in the 5 years between, more than 5 years, in the 8 years between 2015 and 2023, the capacity fees have basically doubled. So we're seeing a difference there, but it's slow in coming, and it depends on growth, which may or may not happen. The capacity fee that the agency has received agency-wide during the last 8 years is about $6.5 million. So you can see how that compares to the needs that we have for capital facilities. So I've mentioned that we have these treatment plant needs, but we also have our entire 5-year capital improvements plan that the board updates every year. We're always looking 5 years ahead for financing purposes for all of our water needs in our entire service area. And currently, that 5-year CIP is estimated to cost $155 million. And that includes several projects related to the ion treatment plant. But with that kind of number, clearly prioritization is critical to us because we're not going to find $155 million in this county. So what is our plan? Our plan is to take interim steps to improve capacity. We have 3 projects that we've identified at the ion treatment plant site and at our ion reservoir site that will address the most significant bottlenecks in the treatment system, and that will increase the plant's capacity to get to the point of what we consider to be reliable capacity for existing customers, and that could provide capacity for additional connections. Those 3 projects are estimated to cost $19 million. And my board is moving us toward doing a bond issuance this spring for dollars to pay for those projects. That would get our plant capacity to 3.1 million gallons a day. Incidentally, the difference between the 2.8 that we are at now and the 3.1 we're trying to get to, if we turned all of that into new connections, the capacity fees that we would collect are $9 million. So it's not going to pay for the projects. So that's why we have to bond and then spread that cost out over time. But the ion treatment plant projects are the agency's highest priority, my board's highest priority for financing. That's why even while we're looking at state revolving fund loans, federal water infrastructure loans, other, grants, all those sources of financing, the fastest way that we can get money is doing a bond issuance. And my board has said we're going to do that specifically aimed at the ion treatment plant improvements. Next. This $19 million expenditure is not the long-term solution. Our projection for need for the plant in the long term, looking at a 20-year term, is 5.3 million gallons a day compared to our existing 2.8. We will certainly be evaluating that over time as we go to see if that kind of growth is occurring, but that's the long-range target. We are planning meetings with the state, with the Department of Corrections and CAL FIRE. The state is the biggest individual user of water within the ion treatment plant service area. Councilmember Rhodes and I have been working for 2 months to get a meeting with the warden at the prison, which we think is going to happen Monday, so that we can begin a conversation with them about the Department of Corrections, and we'll be meeting with CAL FIRE as well. We've also met with Senator Alvarado Gil about this issue, and we'll be continuing to do that. And I am meeting with Senator Padilla's staff on Thursday to talk about this issue. We are looking to partner with the county and Ione and other cities, as is described in the housing element update that everybody recently adopted, to work together collaboratively on finding the funding needed to address this problem so that it isn't an impediment to meeting housing goals and economic development goals. And we would invite the private business community to join with us in funding advocacy. In the meantime, It is critical for the agency that we protect the ability to reliably serve existing customers. And that's what the emergency declaration is for. It makes all the findings about what the situation that we're in, but we needed to make the emergency declaration so that we can hold off new connections until we actually make the plant improvements, so that the people who are existing customers paying their rates can have reliable service. When we adopt the regulation according to the authority in the water code, the state water code, the board has to adopt regulations and restrictions to protect domestic use, sanitation, and fire protection. The declaration that my board adopted allows the board the discretion to address circumstances as they arise once existing customers are protected, which could be accomplished through some sort of improvement in plant capacity or demand reduction. So if we can achieve demand reduction, that might create room for exceptions to a connections prohibition. As a starting point, the declaration that the board adopted maintains the stage 2 shortage level that we had implemented during the state declared drought emergency previously. The declaration also provided direction to staff regarding possible exceptions to the prohibition on new connections to address projects that may already be actively in development, so that we can try to be fair to people who've made investments. And AWA staff is currently actively coordinating with city staff regarding such projects. And where needed, we will take those to the AWA board if we need to have exceptions. So that's the background and what our plan is. And I am happy to try to address any questions you have.
Council?
I got a couple. Thank you for your presentation. Get back from the microphone, step away from the microphone. So when was it 2000 when they built the the pipeline? It was supposed to fix all the problems.
2008 was the first
Was it
year.
2008? Yeah. So that basically didn't fix the problems, but it got water into Tanner basically because it doesn't come down here.
Yeah.
So you got more capacity up at
Well,
Tanner.
That was a different issue from the plant capacity. That was to improve the raw water supply. But that supply comes to both plants. It comes to Tanner and Ione. And that project reduced water losses.
Right. But the water, my beef back then was, you have a bucket with a hole in it. And so you want to spend $20 million buying a new bucket. But it was like, well, the water was free or there's an excess of capacity. So why fix the bucket? Because if it leaks, so what? Because we have way more supply than we use. But anyway, that's.
When the decision was made to move forward with the Amador transmission pipeline, which was after the Department of Corrections built the Ione transmission line so that the Ione Canal wasn't the source for your treatment plant. We have a 15,000 acre foot allocation from PG&E. That's our water supply. When I say we don't have a water supply problem, it's because we're not using more than 8,000 or 9,000 of the 15,000.
Right.
But in the year 1999, 2000, we used 13,000.
Okay. So there's the pipeline. You did a rate study, what was it, 2 years ago? Or was it 3 years ago? Where basically everything went up, will go up 100% in 5 years. Why wasn't this identified? Because there was a lot of capital improvements in that rate study. I mean, it was basically a wish list of fixing every single thing that you had. And that's why, and I argued with you back then, is if you don't use any water by the end of the 5 years, it'll be $1,000 to not use any water because of the capital improvement section of that. Why wasn't that addressed back then? I mean.
So the Water Master Plan study identified all the deficiencies in our entire service area and grouped those into what was divided up into a 20-year master plan of 20-year capital improvements plan. About half of the total cost of that entire plan is the Tanner and Ione treatment plants because this problem was identified. In the first 5 years of it, there were extensive expenditures programmed, some of which we've already undertaken, which is what, the first number one priority project was to do the follow-on study of the treatment plants to find what the bottlenecks were. And then the projects that we've done in the last year to make improvements at Tanner and to do further investigation at the Ione site were identified as projects in the Water Master Plan study. And the three projects for the Ione plant that we're saying now we're going to issue bonds for were identified in the first 5-year chunk of projects that were the driver for the rate study.
Right. Okay. Sorry, developer funding, I mean, I recall that it wasn't just connection fees that the water agency gets, but developers had to actually do things, like build a storage tank or make all these, costs to the water agency in order to get their project approved. And it seems a little unfair that, the developers have, fronted the money and now you're saying they have to go to you and maybe they'll get a connection and maybe they don't. So, I mean, and that's a concern. A question is there the rural water line, excuse my accent, raw, whatever. So is there the water line the water that comes down into the Ione Reservoir? That's not the raw water line, is it? That's a
It is.
separate line. That is.
That's untreated water.
Right. And so that goes through the treatment plant and then, okay, so because I was going to suggest that, because you do have that you could perhaps utilize that in another treatment plant, but that's what you're using. Didn't the loss of Preston in 2011 help? I mean, that's got to cut back water use and so you should have picked something up there, shouldn't you, from Preston? Bless you.
Yeah, I'm not as personally familiar with the timeline on that.
That was
I know
2011.
So 2011.
Yeah.
So then, I don't remember the exact year, but of course Mule Creek was built in the late 80s.
Yeah.
And then since then, the inmate population has nearly quadrupled.
But you also approved the addition to Mule Creek State Prison as well. So
The water agency didn't approve. We had an agreement with the prison already for what the ultimate demand was going to be, and they had paid for infrastructure to support that, including the Ione transmission pipeline and the prison tank. But we didn't get any financial support for them later when they did the major expansion.
you did
And-
not.
We did not.
Why not?
That's the mistake.
Well,
Why not?
I was not here at the time, so I can't say, but that's one reason that I want to meet with
Right.
the warden and find out how to get in touch with his headquarters, his finance department, and figure out what we can talk about in that regard.
Well, it certainly would.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, and I want to talk to them about whether we can get some funding from them and also whether there are options for doing additional water conservation so that they don't use as much as they do. And I want to have that conversation with CAL FIRE as well, because the CAL FIRE Academy was built later
Right.
and added in as well.
And they
They've also
contributed
responded.
nothing, huh?
I'm sure that they paid the kinds of fees that normal developers do, but I can't say whether that was enough or not. I mean, it's a pretty torturous history, as you can imagine, and I'll still play the new guy card. I've been here 3.5
Right.
years, but I'm committed to solving the problem going forward.
Yeah. Then because I gotta give you a dig here, because of the price increase, I mean, I don't use as much water as I used to. And my grass looks crappy because of it. But I think a lot of people, I mean, if you go around Castle Oaks, they tore out their turf, put in, xeriscape landscape. And then the new regulations, I believe 4 years ago, prohibited turf. So they're, the next 300 or 400 homes will not have turf in the front. So, I mean, so there were not many savings there either, is what it looks like. So despite all of those people not using the water,
It
you're
probably
still in
kept-
trouble.
It probably kept us from having an emergency declaration for 3 or 4 years.
Okay. And that's it. Thank you for answering my questions. I appreciate it.
Your bond that you're putting forth, is that going to be countywide bond or is that only for Ione?
It's a revenue bond for the whole, it's supported by the agency's revenue.
So the entire county?
Right. Well,
Okay.
we serve about 60% of the county's population. We have about 24,000 customers.
Okay. And you're talking about demand reduction would be assistive, but your demand reduction also then reduces your revenue. So
Yes.
how are you offsetting that?
We will live with it. We structured our rates so that about 60% of our revenue comes from our fixed charges, which is why people want to know why they pay so much for the connection to the system, even if they're not using much water. So that has kept the volumetric cost a little bit lower. And, you know, that helps to ameliorate the impacts of water conservation. But sure, we could make more money if we sold more water, but if we can't treat enough water, we don't have water to sell. So we've got to solve that problem one way or another. And the fact is that, you know, it's going to take us time to raise the capital and build the projects to do that. So if conservation helps get us there, that's good for us. Now, at the same time, the state has implemented new regulations on all water systems, public water systems in the state, including us, that is setting an efficiency target that we will have to meet. And I don't know yet how much effort that's going to take. I think in the next few years, we're going to be okay because our usage is pretty efficient now, but the rules make the efficiency target ratchet tighter and tighter over a period of years. And so investments that we make in water conservation are also going to be necessary for compliance with that. And maybe that'll also help with our treatment plant capacity.
And they're offering you no funding to help you and assist you in those areas.
Well, it's, there's money available in some ways. The state is not saying that they're offering money specifically for the conservation regulations. But there's a lot of money that comes from the federal government for water conservation. It all comes through the Bureau of Reclamation. We're not a Bureau of Reclamation customer. It makes it very hard for us to get that money. The big urban areas tend to get it. But we are working on finding money for conservation, and I think we've got a handle on some. We have been talking to the Department of Water Resources about getting some grant funding in conjunction with the health of the fisheries in the Bay Delta, where they want us to be able to contribute flows during dry years. So we're saying if you want us to contribute flows during dry years, you need to help us pay to conserve water during that time. And my intention is if we get that money, it's all going to be targeted at the Ione service area.
And you said that you cannot expand the Ione plant. Did I mishear that?
We've got real restrictions on how much we can do at the existing plant site.
And why is that? Is it
First of all, it's
geographics?
small, and secondly, it's not very geotechnically stable. So to do improvements there, we have to build some shoring and, you know, build. I'm not a geotechnical engineer, so I don't know the terms. But we've got to build supports. One of the projects that we have to do in the near term, if we're going to keep using that site at all, is we have to improve the access. The driveway is too narrow. It's too close to the edge of an unstable slope. It's not fenced. Department of Homeland Security is not happy about that. We can't get big trucks hauling chlorine safely up and down there very well, I don't think. So we have to address that. We are going to make improvements at the site, and we will use them as long as we have that site. The ultimate solution likely is a new plant to replace the existing plant, either where our reservoir site is on the other side of 104 and out toward 88 a little bit. Either there or a regional facility at the Tanner location that replaces both plants. And it'll be a while before we have to make that decision because we have to do the interim steps anyway, and that'll hopefully buy us some time.
Sorry to interrupt, but so if you improve Tanner, then you would send down treated water instead of raw water. Is that correct?
If we replace Ione with a treatment plant that's a regional plant at Tanner, we would have to either convert the Ione transmission line to a treated water line. There's a procedure for doing that, or build a new treated pipeline, which is a major expense. That would be what I'd love to do because we have raw water customers down here and I would like to keep serving water to them, but it's a major expense to put in a new pipeline.
Thank you.
Did the county provide you any ARPA funds for any of these projects that you have? Did you solicit any ARPA funds from the county?
We responded when they solicited requests for funding. The county had set aside $1 million of their ARPA funding for water and wastewater projects. They solicited those funds and their guidance initially was that they didn't expect to give more than $100,000 to any particular agency or project. We ended up getting them to agree to provide us about $240,000 for two different projects. But they were pretty restrictive, and I think it came from the ARPA program on what sorts of projects they could be. So from my perspective, though, any money we get from them is good. This is part of the consolidation of our finances, is that we can put the full financial power, such as it is, of the agency behind borrowing for any project, no matter where it is in our service area. And any grant funding or any financial assistance or any savings we achieve anywhere in the agency helps all of us, because it's, you know, the money's fungible.
Councilman Mitchell?
My only piece is going after the mitigation from CDCR and CAL FIRE. If you go back in time, Senator Dave Cox at the time originally on the record said, your plan to expand this prison does not address the mitigation needs that are required for our county or for the city of Ione. And no one went and got those mitigation funds. And here we are. So I would go and talk to Senator Alvarado Gil. I'd certainly get meetings with CDCR and CAL FIRE. And I'd look at federal funds with McClintock's office. If you're not in contact with them, I can get you in contact with them. So.
Thank you. This is what we want to do. And when we approach legislators, I would really like to be able to have the water agency, the county, the city, the Chamber of Commerce, whoever else wants to come to be a part of that, or at least write letters.
Absolutely.
I have nothing.
Okay, I'll open it up to public comment.
First of all, I don't like giving East Bay free water. I don't know why we're doing that. 5 million gallons, and we're also giving Consumers River water, which is more than that. I think it's 22,000 gallons now. And they ain't getting nothing for it. This county ain't getting nothing for it, and they had the water rights to it. Another thing is, I don't know why, how many houses have we did by doing special amendments? We added that was not on the original subdivisions. We've added houses to that, I do believe, in your amendments. One of them was Shakely Lane. That's why they redid and narrowed it, to put more houses in there. Anyway, I don't know why that is, but I don't think us customers should be paying for a developer so he can build these things. We already paid for the system. We're already paying, I think it's $18 million loan that we're paying every month on. It ain't paid off. That's for the developer, wasn't for me. It's all for the developer. And I believe part of that was a tank. I think the $6 million we borrowed for, paid for that. The developer only paid $1 million, I heard. I could be wrong on that. But I, as a customer, I don't know why I should be paying for a developer or the prison system. I just don't understand that. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Dave Livingstone. Thank you, Mr. McKinney, for coming here today. I had a question on the $19 million. Again, just to clarify, would that bond impact all the people in Ione and some other people?
The bond would be a revenue bond supported by revenues in the water enterprise of the entire agency, so all of the customers. When we did the rate increase in 2021, and for 5 years, a $15 million bond issuance was programmed into that. That was part of the financial model. So we need more than that now, and we are working with a municipal advisor and bond counsel and underwriters and everybody to make sure that we can afford to do that. But we have to have the revenue to be able to pay the debt service and meet debt covenants. And that's something that will affect the rates of every water agency customer in the county.
Thank you. Jack, you raised a good point about the prison, and there seems to be some missing dollars that were never given to the city of Ione. And it had to do with, I guess, what, supply of water to the prison?
Was mitigation for the expansion of the prison. Was never done.
Okay, so my question is, when we're talking about $19 million, I think it's a good idea to meet with the prison people and to get money from them and to remind them of the time that the city was not paid. So, you know, they have what, between 5,000 and 6,000 prisoners out there, somewhere in that range.
Between 4 and 5.
What's the city population of people not in prison?
6 or 7,
What's that?
between 6 and 7.
6,000 and 7,000? Okay, so that's a good portion then, the prisoners. So, they're flushing their toilets and taking their showers too, aren't they?
They use what, a third of the capacity? I've heard 50%, I've heard 30%,
Well,
somewhere in there, depending on the day.
depends on the day, between a third and a half of the capacity.
That's your capacity for your plant.
This is public comment. We've already had our discussions.
Oh, okay, so, anyway, I'm just,
You're okay, I'm
I'm just trying to, bring out some points that I think are important for what's going on here. I'll end up. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
David.
McKinney.
Anyone else for public comment?
How about online?
I thought you looked like you were ready to jump up.
I don't know. I thought to myself, I should have been taking notes because I'm gonna get up here and forget everything. But yeah, I'd like to echo like Mr. Rose is saying, just, you know, the revenue bond is great if the revenues are there to pay for it, but if that means that we need to increase our revenue in order to cover that bond, then I definitely don't think that's necessarily fair to the members of the public that already live here. We are paying for past projects that got us to this point today. And I think part of it, I look at as a positive, is that measured growth, right? We can't expand and grow faster than the infrastructure to support it. So this might be somewhat of a blessing in disguise until these problems are fixed. But if there's anything we can do from the city perspective of when a development comes in the EIR process or whatever that, you know, impact project shows, if we can be an advocate to help, you know, get more money from a developer to fund some of this, I think that would be good because what I'm hearing is we're meeting demand of what we have now. But if we grow anymore, we're not going to. But I also I understand that, you know, running a motor at 3,000 RPM is not as ideal as running it at 1,000 RPM, right? It's going to eventually wear and tear is faster, and we may have ourselves a problem if we keep running it at capacity. So I get that. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody.
Allison, can you hear me online?
I can hear you, although I've been informed we are not taking public comment on Zoom.
Really? Is this new?
No.
It's been in effect since,
Yeah, so it's up to chair. Your agenda indicates that people can view and participate in the
Exactly.
meeting. So if you want to allow comment and it's.
okay, David, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind everybody that in 2020, there was an administrative civil liability order agreed to by CDCR. And as part of that fine, they agreed to an enhanced compliance action where they were going to replace their irrigation system because it was leaking so badly. And that replacement program was going to be $1 million. And I'm pretty certain they haven't even started it. So there's an extensive amount of leakage going through their irrigation system, on top of which all of that irrigation system is treated water, which makes no sense. It should have been raw water to begin with. So just another point for somebody to discuss with CDCR. That's it.
Thank you, David. Any more public comment online? Since we opened it up. No? All right, I'm going to close public comment. We'll move on to item 2.
Thank you, Water Agency.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Larry. This is item 2, Amador County Unified School District School Closure Consolidation Program Project concerning the draft environmental impact report and the comment letter.
So this is a follow-up meeting to the joint Planning Commission and City Council workshop that was held. When did we hold that? I've had so many of them at this point. Last week.
January 23rd.
Thank you. January 23rd.
January 23rd. Yeah.
I've literally been to no less than like 10 meetings on this topic. So so attached in your packet is the draft letter along with the comments that were discussed at that workshop. I'll go through the letter kind of quickly, just hitting some of the highlights. The issues that we have with that staff and the public identified and Planning Commission and City Council identified with the draft environmental impact report is focused on the Chapter 3 project description, the fact that some of the improvements to the proposed expansion at the junior high appears to be on Southern Pacific Railroad property. Not sure how if there's a lease for that, how that's being accommodated. Safety features that are not in the project description, and the project description has no information regarding the disposition of the existing Ione High Elementary School. There's issues with population and housing. Why we understand that section, population and housing, the threshold is intended to address population-inducing impacts. We think that the patterns of growth in the county that indicate that Ione is obviously the highest growth area, that needs to be addressed as to why the Board of Trustees evaluated the decision to close the school in the fastest growing area.
Can I ask a question while you're there?
Absolutely.
Amber Hoska, our chair for our planning.
Yes.
She submitted a letter outlining the premise that they were using and the reports that they were using for the housing and population. And it was based on 2009 information. I think to further bolster this piece of the letter that information should be included, because in 2009, our population was nothing to what it is now. The population between 15 and 2023 has grown exponentially.
If that's the council's direction, I have read her entire synopsis of what issues that she identified with that environmental impact report as well. And I can certainly include more narrative as to what the population issues are.
Yeah, I mean, basically their premise is, they based it on 2009 information.
Well,
is what
they use that as the baseline.
Yeah.
And then they went through using Department of Finance population and also the general plan information as to how it's growing. The problem that I saw with it is that they're using each jurisdiction has a different time period for their general plan, and Ione's is a little bit older, so it's not going out as far as the others. So it doesn't look like there's as much growth here as when you look at the other areas that they're comparing the growth rate to.
Well, what they used for Sutter Creek was absurd.
And that's because their general plan is more current. And so it's going out further. So
Well, I
it's
think it
taking in a bigger.
it included a development that didn't.
I
That
understand.
doesn't exist.
I understand. The
Well,
rush.
didn't we just update our general plan? So,
Last year we adopted.
right, we adopted a new general plan, so that needs to be included in here?
I don't have. I'm gonna have to go back and look at that, but my analysis was that they were using apples and oranges basically to come up with what their growth rates were in the different areas. And I can certainly expand on the narrative in this population.
Yeah,
se-
because
section.
it absolutely is
I will.
It's not apples to apples for sure.
Yeah, well, I will say though, that knowing how the consultants work, having been written EIRs for a long time, they're gonna hang their hat on this section is growth inducing impacts. They're not gonna, so is the project gonna create more growth that's gonna have further impacts on the environment? That's what they're gonna hang their hat on this. So we can, I mean, I certainly will add narrative to drive home the point that the population patterns aren't really truly reflected in the descriptions and in the analysis, but the bottom line is that they don't have to respond to these
Right.
comments because it's not growth inducing.
Gotcha.
So, but I will certainly add to that section.
Thank you.
Okay. Transportation, this is clearly, in most jurisdictions and the Amador County Transportation Commissions, the biggest impacts analysis fail in the draft environmental impact report. The city of Ione's, circulation element of the general plan and the Amador County Regional Transportation Plan both have goals that prioritize traffic and circulation safety. And yet the EIR seems to completely avoid any discussion of safety impacts. The impacts and potential mitigation should be addressed in the transportation section, and not in the appendices. And the Senate, Bill 743 that replaces the level of service analysis with vehicle miles traveled. They're hanging their hat on that they don't have to do that LOS and the queuing impacts, which drive safety concerns. They don't have to do that, and that's just not true. It does not relieve them of the need to do those safety impact analysis. The draft EIR would hinder the city's goals to improve its transportation network, including roadway, bicycle, and pedestrian infrastructure. And there's no explanation as to how and why this impact is considered less than significant. There's not enough information about the valet and busing programs to consider this adequate mitigation. They just say they're going to do it, but it doesn't demonstrate how that mitigates it to a level of insignificance. And then they have a mitigation that relies on this whole future study, and you can't use a future study as mitigation. So if you have a study that demonstrates that you have these impacts and here are the recommendations, that should be incorporated into the environmental impact report so the decision makers know how much the mitigation is going to cost and can make a better informed decision about what the impacts and including economics of their actions are. There's very, very little discussion about emergency services and how the roadways can handle this at the same time evacuation from the site with first responders trying to come into that site on those narrow roads with no sidewalks, very little shoulders. There's just no discussion about that. Again, it goes back in circles into that safety situation. We'll go into utilities and services. The EIR does not describe the wastewater collection capacity issues and concludes that closure of the existing elementary school will decrease the overall capacity requirements to the wastewater treatment plant. This assumes that there's no reuse of the existing elementary school. So typically, if you sell your house and you move into a new house, you don't get to take those wastewater credits with you. They stay at the house that you just left. Same thing with the school district. They get treated the same way. So they have to, they can't just transfer, transfer that use. You have to assume that something's going to go in and use those fixture units that are in existence already, unless they're deciding to demolish it, but we don't know because the project description doesn't detail that.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense because they're not, the people from the elementary school effectively are going to the junior high. So the junior high is going to have double the capacity and the elementary school in their mind is going to have zero. So it's a wash anyway. I mean, the bodies are still going to be in Ione. They're just going to be, different.
Right, but there's the potential for there to be even more bodies.
Right.
If they decide to sell that site
Absolutely.
and it's reoccupied, so they can't hang their hat on the existing capacity going to another location. It just doesn't work that way. I think one of the biggest things that we've added to this letter after the meeting that we had, the joint workshop that we had, was that we're asking that the analysis that Caltrans is asking for and that we all agree needs to be done. And then, I know in the city of Jackson, they were relying on additional studies for their wastewater capacity or their wastewater collection system and additional studies for their water capacity. Again, relying on future studies. All of these studies being put into a draft environmental impact report into a final environmental impact report that does not have a requirement for public review. The way it works is the draft is completed, we all get to review and comment on it. They respond to those comments when they take action on that project. So there's no additional review period after those comments are responded to. And in this case, CEQA allows for CEQA guidelines section 150885A requires recirculation if there's significant more new and information, particularly if it changes any of the findings of significance, then you have to recirculate. And we are the cities, this city in this letter, and Caltrans, the Amador County Transportation Commission, and Jackson and Sutter Creek are all going to request that they recirculate, they update the information that's being requested by all the agencies and Caltrans, and that they recirculate the CIR. So we have another opportunity to look at what the real impacts are and comment on them, and if their mitigation is adequate or not.
So are they going to be conducting a transportation demand management plan and then at a later date decide that what they're going to do with it, but yet they're including it in this as their mitigation? Is that what I'm to
They put the
understand?
traffic demand analysis as mitigation, which is illegal according to the California Environmental Quality Act. You can't, again, rely on a future study. So Caltrans specifically asked for that analysis, as did the Amador County Transportation Commission. We, in the other agencies, indirectly asked for that analysis, and it hasn't been done. The comment letter that Caltrans prepared and submitted back to the school district said, hey, you guys, we asked for this, you didn't do it. It still needs to be done and put into the environmental impact report. It remains to be seen if the school district will do that or not.
Council? Any questions?
Good job on that. I'm sorry I missed the meeting. I was sick last week, so I would have been there. Thanks to the flowers.
I just have one correction on the letter.
Yeah.
It's 1L.
Her name. You spelled her name wrong.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're fine. Oh, there's just 1L. Doesn't matter. F. An F's an F. Open it up for public comment. Right? Make it 4 out of 4.
I just want to say, great job, Susie. I appreciate all the effort. It's a daunting document about this big, so it takes a lot to go through line by line. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So what I'm looking for is I can certainly add that additional narrative and then get the final letter given to Amy for signature and, execution and sending out by the mayor. I just need action tonight. The 13th is Tuesday.
Okay. Can I get a motion? With the changes?
The staff, did they get the changes? Is everyone clear on the changes? So if they are, I'll make the motion to draft an environmental impact report and authorize the mayor to execute and send before February 13th, 2024 due date.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, reports and communications from city attorney.
Just real quick, short and sweet, just a general reminder for your Form 700s, your annual reporting, the timeline's coming up April 1st. So better faster than later.
Oh, we thought we got you to do those for us.
I'm happy to help. And then the secondary thing is, this is the time of year also, even years is when we'll typically come to the agencies talking about your trainings, being your AB 1234, which is your Brown Act and Ethics training, and also sexual harassment training. We can provide both those and we can work with Amy and staff, but just general reminder that will be probably coming down the pipe here fairly quickly.
How long are those worth?
2 hours each.
No, how long are the certificate? Because we took it, didn't we?
The certificates are every 2 years, or they're good for
Good.
2 years.
We're good.
Yeah, so if, just a general reminder.
Okay. Reports and communications from city manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have two things. We will be having our wastewater meeting on Thursday, and we will work to schedule, I'm sorry,
Isn't it Friday?
no, it's Thursday at 5. And then we'll work to schedule a
date.
finance meeting. Is it at 4?
The wastewater is at 5.
Yeah, it's at 5.
Thursday, no Friday, got it.
Yeah,
And then
Thursday.
we'll work to schedule a finance meeting for next week. And that's all I have.
Council comments, future agenda items and committee reports.
Nothing for me at this time.
Nothing for me.
Got a nice city event coming up.
I forgot. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, it's-
City of Love, is it, what is it? Ione
Love
Love?
Ione.
Love Ione?
Love Ione. Make sure on Saturday at 3:00, we're going to do an aerial photo, which is going to be very cool down by the tunnel at the park and ride. And there's going to be some great raffle prizes and some things from your local businesses. Please shop, support local. A lot of people went to a lot of work. If you haven't seen the bridge, then I don't think you've been in Ione. But come see it up close, get your photos, and
Wear red.
wear red and enjoy each other. Love Ione.
Enjoy each other. That was a little strange.
I have one item. I would like to know where we are with the tractor
Oh, yeah.
lease, rental, purchase, whatever it is.
Our interim public works superintendent is working on that.
You have something on public records. The only thing I have is an update. Council members might remember this from last year. We had a homeowner at Wildflower. She lives on the end of Sage Court. Her house is on the very end. And during the monsoon last year, Niagara Falls was coming off the side of the hill into her backyard. And it got into her garage and it was right up to her sliding glass door. And she reached out last year and Ken Mackey made it over there real quick and they got some sump pumps in there and drained it out before it got into her home. At the time, the city manager said that the homeowner had simply blocked her drains. And that wasn't true. So it happened again this year, and she reached out to me because the superintendent, she didn't know the new superintendent's phone number. I don't know who the new superintendent is. I reached out to Thomas. He met with her. He said those drains, so literally the water coming off the side of the hill is miles of water running down the railroad tracks. It's made a culvert, basically. And there's so much water coming down. And then I don't know who went and trimmed all those trees out along Brickyard, but they left a lot of the limbs there. And so it created a dam. And that water diverted over, came over the bank and right down into their backyard. It's a huge amount of water. And Thomas said there's no way those drains could even handle that much. So my understanding is Thomas reached out to Ken Mackey, and the youth authority is going to go out there and clean that area up so that water runs free, because there is a manhole or something right there where the water is supposed to go. So I haven't told the homeowner yet. I just haven't gotten back to her, but he reached out to me and said, this is what we did, and it's over with Chief Mackey. So hopefully that never happens again, that poor homeowner. Future agenda items? Just you
Tractor
did
is
the
online.
tractor. Any,
No.
Adjourn to closed session.
yep. Okay, so we are going to adjourn to closed session. It will be item number 1, public Emily. There's a typo in there. Employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, Title City Manager. And number 2, conference with Labor Negotiations Government Code 54957.6, Agency Designated Representative Amy Gedney, Interim City Manager, Employee Organization, I Own POA.
Take public comment. Take public comment on the closed session.
Is there any public comment on closed session? Nope, seeing none. We'll adjourn to closed session. Part of this is on without opening your mouth. It's coming out my nose.
Oh.
Oh.
No, it's okay.
Oh, shit. I wrote it. You didn't see it. I'm like. I need some water. I need water. I'm dehydrated, so my blood pressure.
Hi, Betty. 2 minutes. Yes. I'm trying to feel better. All right. I know.
Hey, yeah, hold it down. Yeah, I didn't know. And I was like, oh, I don't They don't have all the equipment. Yes, exactly. So I can hear you guys down the wall. Hurry up.
Pretty thrilling meeting.
Okay.
They seem to really work. Oh, they done nothing, no, they, CDF, they put, I think they're 38 or 40 dorms out there.